The first sea dragon lost its color while Millicent Shore was being stripped of her fire. At brimstone pans, volcanic basins breathed through black stone. For 22 years, Millicent had read them by scent, crust, and flame. True flame salt formed in crimson petals along the edges. It did not merely stay warm. It remembered how to give warmth back. Admiral Jessamine Crowl stood beside the seizure carts. By order of Dragon King Ulric Bane, all pans, tools, stores, and transport rights belonging to Millicent Shore are transferred to naval custody pending inquiry into the North Wake deaths. My salt did not kill that crew. 7 sailors froze before North Cape. 2 sea dragons lost wing strength. Your shipment was their common heat supply. The shipment left these pans alive. Salt is not alive. Flame salt is if you know how to test it. Jessamine held up a sealed naval sample. This barrel carries your seal. My seal proves the salt was born in my pans. It does not prove what the Navy did to its fire afterward. Widow Shore's husband made the same defense before his convoy disappeared. Admiral Shore had sailed north 3 years earlier with 12 transport ships and 6 sea dragons. Only wreckage returned. The Navy recorded that he had failed to prepare the dragons for freezing water. No body came home. No hearing allowed Millicent to examine the cargo remains. She had received only Edrin's sea cloak, stiff with salt that would not warm beneath her hands. She had spent 3 winters carrying the accusation that her husband's care had been negligence. Now the same Navy wanted her pans. Dragon King Ulric Bane arrived in a black cloak, his face hardened by sea wind. Years ago, he had carried her across these burning flats. Neither had spoken of what survived the crossing. Today, he carried the confiscation decree. The fleet cannot sail while its heat supply remains in question. Then test the process after it leaves my pans. It has been investigated by the admiral who controls the holds and the contract. Jessamine said, the Northern Fleet requires unified handling. Independent pans create uncertainty. Independent pans create comparison. That is why you want them closed. Ulric opened the decree. The brimstone pans are closed under emergency naval authority. Admiral Crowl receives the full flame salt contract until the inquiry concludes. He had not burned her pans. He had done something cleaner. He had placed every future test inside the hands, already changing how her salt survived the sea. You are giving the accused supply chain every measure used to examine itself. I am preventing another convoy death. You are preventing anyone outside the Navy from proving what the Navy carried. She held his gaze. You did not ask whether my salt failed. You asked the Navy how to keep using it after they changed it. Guards moved toward the tools. Millicent raised one hand. No one touches the Western Basin. You no longer hold authority here. Jessamine said. The crust has not finished breathing. Break it now and the lower heat pocket will burst. Ulric stopped the guards. You remember my hands only when your men may burn. Jessamine ordered the finished barrels loaded. Millicent broke a crimson crystal from the nearest rim and placed it against a healthy scale carried by the dragon keeper. The salt glowed. Red heat moved through the crystal and returned to the scale. True flame salt. Witness it before it leaves. A pan test does not clear the cargo that failed North Wake, Jessamine said. No, it fixes the point where the salt was still true. A naval messenger rode into the flats. The flagship dragons are failing. Their scales are turning gray inside the sealed reserve hold. Ulric mounted. Millicent caught the bridle. You closed my pans because salt failed inside naval custody. You do not enter that hold without an independent flame witness. You are under investigation. So is the process. The hold is restricted naval property, Jessamine said. Millicent released the bridle. Then let your dragons go gray in private. Ulric looked at her. Bring her. He had not restored her standing. He had only made her knowledge admissible where his dragons were dying. The cargo hold lay beneath the eastern cliffs. When its iron doors opened, heat should have rolled outward. Instead, cold spilled across the threshold. 3 enormous sea dragons lay chained in transport bays, their blue-black scales fading to gray along the ribs. Barrels bearing Millicent's seal stood open beside them. There is your supply, Jessamine said. Millicent pressed 1 grain against a healthy shoulder scale. No warmth returned. The crystal darkened while gray residue spread over the scale. Cold-tempered flame salt. It was born true. then killed after leaving the pans. Dead salt keeps the color. It steals the heat, Jessamine said. The Navy is required to preserve heat cargo through ice-water transit. Preserve is not the same as keep alive. Millicent crushed a crystal. The shell still glowed faintly. The core was cold. The shell stayed red, the heart was dead. At the rear of the hold, iron cooling rings circled the barrel racks. Dull blue frost clung to their inner teeth. Northern fleet marks had been stamped into the metal. You cold-tempered living salt. Temperature stabilizers, Jessamine said. Foreign ships cross ice water without losing cargo. I adapted what worked. The method was approved before the first northern crossing. No naval code forbids stabilizing volatile salt. Because no naval code understands living salt, cold tempering makes salt travel farther, Millicent said. It also teaches it to stop being alive. Ulric stared from the failing dragons to the cooling rings. He had closed the pans before asking what the Navy had done to the fire after it left them. My pans did not fail your dragons. One sea dragon shifted. A scale loosened from its flank, struck the stone, and turned completely gray near the tempered barrels. The scale had not chosen Jessamine. Sea dragon scales lost color where living heat had been stripped hardest, and the cold trace lay thickest across the treated racks. Ulric looked at the sealed barrels bearing Millicent's mark. The salt was hers. The death inside it was not. And if dead salt had sailed north once before, then Admiral Shore had died under a lie that still wore his wife's seal. The salt had not been stolen. That would have been easier. It had been killed while still wearing Millicent Shore's seal. Ulric Bane ordered the Admiral's hold closed before another barrel could be moved. No naval hand touches the racks, he said. No cooling ring is removed. No sample leaves without 3 witnesses. Admiral Jessamine Crowl stood beside the iron doors. You are sealing the fleet's reserve during active northern preparation. I am preserving the process now under question. The process is approved. Then it will survive examination. Ulric appointed a senior sea dragon keeper, a brimstone harvester chosen by Millicent, and a harbor weighmaster with no naval wage. Then he faced Millicent. You are granted temporary flame. Witness standing for the hold. The failed barrels. And every stabilization record tied to them. She looked toward the cliffs where royal guards now occupied her pans. Do not call me witness while keeping my fire under arrest. The pans remain under inquiry. Ulric had opened the hold. He had not opened his hand around the decree that closed her pans. He did not ask her to soften the distinction. Millicent ordered the first failed barrel lifted onto stone blocks. Its outer wax remained whole. Her shore mark had not been broken. Jessamine pointed to it. No change of custody is visible. A seal can guard a barrel, Millicent said. It cannot guard every process forced onto what is inside. She drove a hollow brass sampler through the upper crystals. The salt came out red and faintly warm. The dragon keeper touched it to a healthy scale near the sea dragon's shoulder. A weak thread of heat moved through the crystal and returned. Living at the shell, Millicent said. She pushed the sampler deeper. The middle layer emerged darker. Its heat reached the scale but did not return. At the bottom, the crystals remained crimson in color, yet they felt colder than the hold floor. Millicent crushed one between 2 black stones. The outer shell flashed. The center broke into pale dust. The shell stayed red. The heart was dead. Jessamine folded her hands behind her back. Compression can weaken volatile mineral cores, not in a sealed warm hold. Volcanic instability may begin before shipment. Millicent opened the pan witness record. The same batch had returned heat at Brimstone before loading. My grief did not teach me salt. 22 years of flame did. This core was alive when it left the pans. She tested an untempered sample taken beneath witness that morning. The crystals brightened at once. Red warmth entered the healthy scale, crossed its blue-black ridges, and returned as a low ember glow. The sea dragon exhaled warm mist. Beside it, the core sample from the naval barrel drew heat inward and left gray residue. Fire salt does not lie, Millicent said. It either returns warmth or it eats what warmth remains. The gray scale on the floor darkened only where it touched dust from the dead core. It did not turn toward Jessamine or Ulric. It showed only where heat theft was strongest. Ulric ordered every failed barrel core sampled. Each revealed the same pattern: red outer crystals, a colder middle, a hollow dead center. The harbor weighmaster examined the staves. Around every barrel ran a narrow blue band, burned into the wood at the exact height of the cooling rings. Frostbite, Millicent said. The rings drew heat through the staves until the core stopped answering. Jessamine touched the mark. Controlled cooling reduces flare loss during transport. Preserved cargo is not living fire. The method was approved before the first northern crossing. No naval code forbids stabilizing volatile salt. Because no naval code understands living salt. Jessamine turned to Ulric. Without stabilization, barrels can ignite in sealed holds. Foreign fleets use these rings because northern waters demand adaptation. Unified handling prevents careless variation between harvesters. Independent pans create the comparison, proving your method changed the salt, Millicent said. That remains your interpretation. Then open the ledger. The naval custody book listed every barrel from Brimstone to the flagship hold. No substitution appeared. No seal had been broken. Instead, beside each batch stood a process line. Temperature stabilization applied before northern loading. Duration: 6 hours. Cooling depth: full rack. The first 2 words carried Ulric's naval authorization code. He had not chosen the hours or depth. He had approved the broad procedure that allowed them. A barrel can wear my name and still carry your process, Millicent said. Ulric read the page again. You closed my fire before testing your cold. He ordered the cooling rings preserved as evidence and suspended full rack stabilization for all flame salt. Untempered emergency stock would be issued only under joint witness from a harvester and sea dragon keeper. Jessamine objected. That will delay the fleet. Then the fleet will wait long enough to carry living heat. He expanded Millicent's temporary standing to reject any naval salt batch that failed the return test. He had given her the right to stop dead salt, not the right to protect living salt before the Navy touched it. Her pans remained closed. Her contract remained confiscated. A king who brought her into a hold after closing her pans had only made her knowledge useful without making her heard. The eldest sea dragon shuddered against its chains. Millicent prepared a small measure from the untempered pan sample and pressed it into the warming grooves beneath the creature's ribs. Color did not return at once, but the next breath left the dragon warmer than the last. No one called it recovery. Ulric ordered the Northwake cargo record opened. Jessamine said, That convoy failed 3 years ago under different weather, different crews, and different transport conditions. The stabilization order may not have been different, Millicent replied. The old ledger arrived wrapped in salt-stiff canvas. Admiral Shore's final convoy carried 12 ships, 6 sea dragons, and 40 barrels from Brimstone pans. Every barrel bore Millicent's seal. Every rack had received the same full-depth cooling treatment. The approval line named the method as experimental northern preservation. Jessamine's gaze did not move. Experimental did not mean forbidden, and forbidden was the only word the Navy feared. The report blaming Edrin stated that his dragons entered North Cape unable to hold heat despite adequate flame salt. Millicent turned the final page. A cargo note had been pinned beneath the official account, written in Edrin's hand before the convoy vanished. Salt stilrel. Fire gone. The note did not clear Edrin. It only proved he had named the same death before the Navy named him negligent. Jessamine Crowl did not challenge Edrin's handwriting. She challenged what 6 words could prove. Northwake crossed through storm ice for 9 days, she said. Fire gone may describe exposure after the convoy lost shelter, not damage caused before departure. Millicent kept her hand beside the pinned note. Then why was it buried beneath the official account instead of entered into the findings? Jessamine's expression remained composed. Private cargo observations are not always judged technically reliable. Who received it? The archive clerk turned to the intake marks. Edrin's note had reached the Naval Records Room 2 days before the final distress signal. A receiving stamp showed it entered through the Office of Northern Preservation. The clerk's name had been scraped by salt abrasion, but the office mark remained. My office processed hundreds of reports during that season, Jessamine said. Processed is not considered. Ulric ordered every Northwake paper separated from the general rec file and preserved under the same 3 independent witnesses. Then he faced the clerk. Find the original findings register. The register listed causes of loss. storm exposure, insufficient reheating, captain's failure to preserve dragon readiness, and delayed retreat. Edrin's note did not appear. Neither did any question about flame salt core failure. Millicent looked at Ulric. The Navy did not lose the fire. It filed it under cargo. Jessamine said, because flame salt was classified as volatile mineral supply. There. Millicent placed one finger beside the classification line. You did not steal my salt. You renamed it until your rules could kill it. Classification allows safe handling, Jessamine answered. Without it, every harvester could claim a private exception to naval procedure. Volatile mineral is what you call living fire when you do not want to ask a harvester how it breathes. Ulric ordered the authorization chain opened. His own seal appeared first. 3 years earlier, he had approved Broad Northern Preservation Authority after 2 cargo fires destroyed winter medicine and sailcloth. The decree permitted technical officers to stabilize volatile stores before ice water transit. It did not name flame salt. It did not specify cooling duration. It did not authorize full rack depth. The next order came from Naval Logistics. It placed flame salt under the volatile mineral category. Below it, a technical memorandum selected cooling ring use. Duration: 3 hours. Depth: outer barrel only. Millicent looked toward the present ledger. Northwake received 6 hours at full rack. The clerk found the alteration. It had been entered after the convoy loaded. Reason: insufficient core stability under northern conditions. Approving office: Admiral Crowl's Northern Command. No personal signature appeared. Jessamine did not retreat. Operational offices adjust treatment within approved authority. The first trial showed outer cooling did not prevent flare pockets. Who measured those pockets? Millicent asked. A naval technical officer. Was a harvester present? No code required one. A dragon keeper? No. Was the salt tested for heat return after cooling? The code measured combustion risk. Not whether the salt still lived. Jessamine turned to Ulric. The method was experimental, not forbidden. It reduced hold fires in later voyages. Did it preserve dragon heat? He asked. The records are incomplete. Because no one classified heat return as something worth recording, Millicent said. Ulric expanded her review, standing to all northern stabilization orders, technical memoranda, and dragon temperature reports. Her pans remained closed. Her contract remained in Jessamine's hands. Ulric had opened the old ledger. He had not opened the guards around her pans. You made my knowledge useful after making my authority illegal, Millicent said. He accepted the sentence without stepping nearer. Continue. He had learned not to interrupt her evidence. He had not yet learned that listening was not the same as repair. The Northwake wreck recovery list showed that 14 barrel sections had been found along the ice shelf. Where are the core samples? Millicent asked. The archive clerk searched twice. None had been taken. Neef. Headins neeks. Weight loss, stave damage, and surviving color. Because the crystals remained red, the official report concluded that the salt had reached the convoy intact. A living thing can die inside an unbroken seal, Millicent said. Jessamine replied. Wreckage recovered after weeks in frozen water could not provide a reliable core reading. Then the report could not reliably blame Edrin for failing to rewarm what no one tested. It could evaluate command decisions. Using salt color as proof, the supply remained sound. The harbor weighmaster opened the recovery sketches. Blue bands circled several barrel staves at the same height as the frostbite found in the present hold. The mark had been recorded as ice exposure. Millicent compared the spacing with the preserved cooling rings. Exact width. Exact interval. Under the witness lamps, the blue bands looked less like storm damage than frostbite around a throat. Storm ice forms where water reaches wood, she said. These bands formed where iron teeth held the barrel, Jessamine said. Similarity is not certainty. No, it is a reason to reopen what your office closed. Ulric ordered the Northwake findings suspended pending independent review. He did not erase Edrin's negligence charge. Not yet. Millicent's mouth tightened. Suspended is not corrected. No. A king can pause a lie without repairing the life it buried. I know. Knowing does not warm his cloak. The words struck the silence between them. Ulric did not reach for her. He ordered Edrin's personal navigation chest brought from naval storage. Jessamine objected. Private captain logs may contain classified routes. Then cover the coordinates. Read the salt entries. The chest arrived with its lock already broken from wreck recovery. Inside lay tide tables, dragon feeding counts, and a narrow private log wrapped in oilskin. Several pages had been removed. The final surviving entry had been written on the morning the convoy departed Brimstone waters. Outer cooling completed under technical order. Salt still answering scale. A later line had been added after loading. Full-depth rings ordered aboard before northern departure. No harvester witness. Core return weakened by second bell. Millicent turned the page. The next sheet had been torn away, but pressure marks remained on the paper beneath it. The clerk shaded them with charcoal. Edrin's final private line appeared. Crowl changed the depth after we loaded. The line named the command. It had not yet named the hand. Crowl was a house, an office, and a woman. Millicent needed to know which one had killed the fire. Jessamine stood beside Edrin's opened navigation chest without lowering her eyes. Crowl Northern Command is an administrative authority, she said. The line does not prove a personal order. It proves the depth changed after loading, Millicent answered. And that my husband knew where the change came from. It proves what he believed. Then preserve what remains before belief is edited again. Ulric ordered Edrin's private log, the charcoal pressure sheet, and every loose page from the chest sealed under independent witness. The archive clerk recorded each fold, stain, and torn edge. No naval officer was permitted to remove even a blank sheet. Jessamine said, "The missing leaves may contain classified routes. Classified route is not the same as erased warning." Millicent replied. Ulric ordered the missing page inventory opened. 3 sheets had been removed after the wreck recovery chest entered naval storage. The inventory described them only as route-sensitive material transferred to Northern Command. Transferred by whom? Ulric asked. The archive clerk found no named hand. The transfer line carried a Crowl office stamp and the mark of a technical review clerk. Cover the coordinates, Ulric said. Read every surviving word concerning salt, cooling depth, dragon heat, or cargo treatment. Jessamine's mouth tightened. You are exposing operational records during a fleet crisis. The crisis began inside records that treated living heat as mineral freight. Millicent looked toward him. He had preserved Edrin's pages. He had not opened the gates around brimstone pans. Listening to my evidence is not the same as returning what you took. No, Ulric said. He did not offer more. The technical officer named in the old memorandum was summoned from the eastern dry docks. Master Caldesve arrived with one gloved hand, the other scarred by an old hold fire. He bowed to Ulric, then avoided looking at Millicent. You selected outer barrel cooling for 3 hours, Ulric said. Yes, Majesty. Who changed it to 6 hours at full depth? Caldas glanced toward Jessamine. The adjustment came through Crowl Northern Command. From the Admiral personally? Millicent asked. The order bore the office code. That was not my question. No personal signature appeared. Jessamine spoke before the silence could harden. Operational codes exist so a fleet does not wait for one hand while weather closes a passage. Millicent faced Caldas. What did you classify flame salt as? Volatile mineral cargo. Who approved that classification? The Northern Command Office accepted my recommendation. Did you test whether cooled salt returned heat to dragon scale? No such test existed in naval code. Did you ask a harvester? No. A dragon keeper? No. You did not need to steal my salt after your rules taught it how to die. Caldas looked at the floor. Yes, Samina did not. The full depth adjustment reduced barrel flare, she said. That result was measurable. So was the cold in 6 dragon bodies. Millicent answered. You simply measured the thing your code feared and ignored the life your code could not name. Ulric expanded Millicent's standing again. She could now inspect classification orders, technical transfer records, and all physical Northwake cargo remains. Her pans remained closed. The contract remained under Jessamine's authority. Ulric had opened another door in the inquiry while leaving her livelihood behind guards. A surviving Northwake stave was brought from the salt archive before dusk. The wood had blackened along one edge, but the central band remained pale blue. Under witness lamps, the frost mark circled it like a bruise left by iron. Millicent placed the stave inside one of the preserved cooling rings. The teeth settled exactly over the blue band. Exact width. Exact interval. Caldus examined the fit. It could still reflect later ice compression. Then we test the bite, Millicent said. A dragon keeper brought a healthy scale shed that morning. Millicent warmed it with untempered flame salt until red light traveled beneath its ridges. She held the scale first against clean wood. The light remained steady. Then she pressed it to the blue band. The glow thinned at once. Gray mist gathered along the edge where old frost had entered the grain. The scale did not name a culprit. It revealed only that the stave still carried the same heat-stripping trace as the rings in the Admiral's hold. Caldus stepped closer. That residue should not survive 3 years. Living heat remembers how to return, Millicent said. Dead cold remembers where it was forced. Jessamine folded her hands. One matching trace does not prove the Northwake loss arose from stabilization rather than storm exposure. No, Millicent said. It proves the Navy dismissed ring damage as weather without testing either. Ulric ordered every surviving Northwake stave removed from ordinary storage and preserved for independent examination. Then he asked for the transferred pages. The technical review clerk reported that the route-sensitive packet no longer remained in Northern Command. Where was it sent? No destination was entered. Jessamine said, classified route pages were often destroyed after war review. Then show the destruction receipt, Ulric said. None existed. Millicent stared at Edrin's broken chest. 3 pages had vanished after recovery. His warning had been pinned beneath a report. His barrels had never been core sampled. His salt had remained red enough for the Navy to blame him. But Edrin had never trusted one copy of anything that mattered. At home, he kept tide debts in the hems of curtains, repair lists beneath table boards, and storm routes stitched into the lining of his sea cloak. Millicent went still. Ulric noticed. What is it? She did not answer him. She turned to the archive clerk. The cloak returned with his effects. Where is it? The clerk searched the inventory. Textile storage. Lower salt vault. Jessamine said, a widow's garment is not naval evidence. It became evidence when the Navy returned it without the pages it may have carried. Ulric ordered the vault opened. The cloak arrived stiff with old salt, folded inside gray canvas. Millicent did not reach for comfort in it. She laid it flat beneath the witness lamps and examined the inner hem. One line of stitching near the shoulder had been made in Edrin's hand uneven, doubled at every 4th pull. She cut only the repair thread. A folded sheet slid from the lining. The torn edge matched the missing page in Edrin's private log. Millicent unfolded the hidden sheet with hands that had once mended Edrin's cuffs. Not because the cloth comforted her, but because the page might survive what the Navy had erased. The paper smelled of salt, lamp oil, and the old cedar chest where Edrin had kept his navigation tools. His handwriting ran hard across the page, pressed deep enough to mark the fibers beneath. Full-depth cooling ordered after loading. Crowl command requests, proof that unified handling can replace brimstone witness. No harvester permitted aboard during treatment. I objected that scale return had not been tested. Objection entered as delay risk. No confession stood there. No personal signature. Only an operational purpose the official findings had never named. Jessamine read the copied line without changing expression. An admiral may seek consistent handling without seeking harm. Consistent with what? Millicent asked. A method that measured flare and ignored whether the salt could still return heat? With keeping a fleet from burning. You preserved the barrel from fire by teaching the salt to consume the dragon instead. Ulric ordered the hidden page sealed beside Edrin's log. The archive clerk matched its torn edge, ink, and paper grain to the missing leaf. The fit was exact. That proves the page belonged in the log, Jessamine said. It does not prove Captain Shore understood the full purpose of the trial. Millicent looked at her. Crowl is a house, an office, and a woman. Which one wanted brimstone witnesses removed? The office pursued unified custody. Under whose policy? Under naval necessity. That is not a name. It is the reason command exists. Ulric did not interrupt. He ordered the technical review clerk who had stamped the page transfer brought from the Northern Records Annex. The man arrived after nightfall with salt dust ground into the seams of his coat. Clerk Orrin Vale had been 23 during Northwake. He bowed too quickly and stared at the hidden page as if it had returned from burial. Did you remove 3 sheets from Admiral Shore's log? Ulric asked. I prepared them for route review. Why was this salt warning removed with route coordinates? Orrin swallowed. The pages shared convoy positions. The coordinates could have been covered, Millicent said. Yes. Why were the warnings not copied into the findings? I was told the technical conclusions had already been settled. By whom? The Northern Command Review Desk, Jessamine said. A desk is not a person, Widow Shore. No, it is where people learn to hide behind furniture. Orrin's face tightened. Ulric asked. What technical conclusion had been settled? That the salt remained serviceable because it retained color and seal integrity. Command treated Captain Shore's concern as a reheating failure. Were you shown a core sample? No, maestro. A scale return test? No. Then what settled it? Orrin looked toward Jessamine, but she gave him nothing. The classification, he said. Volatile mineral cargo. Once the seals held and the color remained red, the supply was recorded intact. Millicent's voice stayed quiet. The Navy did not test whether the fire lived because the form had no place to write the answer. Ulric ordered every Northwake finding sheet bearing the volatile mineral classification copied for independent review. He also extended Millicent's standing to question archive custody and technical classification witnesses. The guards remained at Brimstone Pans. The contract remained under Crowl command. Millicent turned to him. You widen the room in which I may prove you wrong. You have not returned the ground from which I could have prevented it. No, Ulric said. He did not offer apology in place of repair. The hidden page contained a second paragraph, partly blurred where damp had entered the cloak. Millicent held it near a witness lamp. Second bell. Inner crystals no longer return full heat. Requested unloading and replacement from Shore Reserve. Denied. Northern departure cannot be delayed for trade superstition. Caldus Vey, the technical officer, closed his scarred hand. I never used those words. Was the request denied? Ulric asked. Through command operations, yes. Did you advise replacement? I advised reducing cooling depth. After the full depth treatment? Yes, Jessamine said. A convoy carrying royal winter stores cannot be unloaded whenever a captain distrusts a new procedure. He did not distrust novelty, Millicent answered. He tested the scale return and named a failure. The test was not recognized. Because your office removed the people who knew how to read it. The Sea Dragon Keeper brought the Northwake stave and placed it beside the hidden page. Millicent warmed a healthy shed scale with untempered salt, then pressed it against the old blue frost band. The red glow narrowed. Gray mist crawled along the grain. Orrin stepped back. He had filed the band as storm damage 3 years earlier. That mark was already described in the recovery sketch, Millicent said. You had the wound. You lacked the language because the Navy had classified the living thing out of the record. Jessamine remained composed. Even if the salt weakened before departure, Captain Shore controlled the convoy after it sailed. His decisions remain subject to review. They should be, Millicent said. Truth does not require me to make him flawless. Ulric looked at her then, but she did not seek comfort in his attention. The final lines on the hidden page were not in Edrin's usual cargo hand. They had been written smaller, as if he expected someone to seize the log. If command forces departure, I will isolate the first treated rack before Blackglass Narrows. Better lose cargo than let dead salt strand 6 dragons in frozen water. The archive clerk opened the Northwake loading manifest. 1 rack of 8 barrels had vanished from the convoy count before the first storm report. Its loss had been entered as unauthorized disposal by Captain Admiral Shore. Ulric ordered the black glass charts spread before the ink on the manifest had dried. The missing rack had been entered as unauthorized disposal, but the route record gave no coordinates, no witness names, and no reason beyond command interference. Jessamine stood at the end of the chart table. Captain Shore removed 8 barrels from an active convoy without approval. Whatever their condition, that decision reduced the reserve available after the storm. Millicent traced the route toward Blackglass Narrows. If he believed the rack was dead, leaving it aboard would have reduced more than reserve. Belief is not proof. No. So we find where he put it. The tide table showed a deviation before the convoy entered the Narrows. Edrin had ordered the third transport ship to slow, while the others held formation. The official account called it hesitation. Millicent compared the time with the hidden page. Second bell. Inner crystals no longer return full heat. The deviation began 12 minutes later. Who witnessed the disposal? Ulric asked. The archive clerk found 2 names. One sailor had died during Northwake. The other, a dragon keeper, had been discharged after the inquiry for supporting Edrin's account. Summon him, Ulric said. Jessamine's voice remained level. A discharged keeper may have reason to protect the captain who defended him. Then his account will be tested against the route and the sea. Ulric had begun to demand witnesses the Navy had once discarded. He had not removed the guards from Millicent's pans. By dawn, the former keeper stood before the chart table with one shoulder bent from cold injury. He said Edrin had opened a barrel after the second bell and tested 3 depths against a healthy scale. The upper salt answered, the man said. The core drank the glow out of the scale. What did Captain Shore order? Millicent asked. He told us to bind the first treated rack in chain and lower it clear of the convoy. Lower, not cast loose? Yes. He marked the chain with a brass recovery bell. Jessamine said. Why prepare recovery if he believed the cargo useless? To prove what happened after the storm. He said command would blame weather if the barrels broke on open water. Millicent did not touch the sea cloak folded beside her. Where was the rack lowered? South wall of black glass narrows. Beneath the split basalt arch. The Navy had never searched there. Its recovery ships followed the wreckage north after the convoy disappeared. Ulric ordered a dive crew prepared. Millicent closed the chart. No. Every eye turned toward her. The narrows hold volcanic current beneath cold surface water. A naval diver following ordinary depth marks will enter the hot cut too early and lose the chain. I will assign experienced men, Ulric said. You assigned experienced men to my pans after taking them from me. His expression tightened. What do you require? 2 brimstone harvesters who know heat shift through black stone. 1 dragon keeper. No Crowl custody over anything recovered, Jessamine said. You are dictating naval salvage. I am preventing naval procedure from destroying a second set of evidence. Ulric granted the conditions. He did not restore the pans. At Black Glass Narrows, cliffs rose like burned teeth from iron-gray water. Steam breathed through cracks near the southern wall. Ulric's flagship waited beyond the current, its largest sea dragon resting low in the water. Several scales still dull from dead salt exposure. Millicent boarded the recovery skiff without taking Ulric's offered hand. Years ago, he had carried her across burning flats. Now she stepped past him and steadied herself against the mast. Do not stand near me because my dead have started answering your records. He lowered his hand. The harvesters read the steam while the dragon keeper watched the creatures breathing. At the split basalt arch, Millicent ordered the sounding chain dropped. Varm at 10 fathoms. Cold at 12. Warm again at 14. There. The rack settled beneath the false cold layer. The divers entered. Jessamine watched from the flagship rail. If the barrels ruptured, no core condition can be separated from 3 years underwater. Then we examine the chain, the rings, and what Edrin chose to preserve. The first diver returned with a brass bell blackened by mineral growth. Edrin's initials remained beneath the crust. The second brought up a chain locked around one cooling ring. Its teeth were packed with crimson crystal fused pale at the center. Millicent scraped 1 grain free. The shell flashed when warmed. The heart remained empty. The sea did not make that pattern. The rack entered the water already dead at the core. Jessamine replied. 1 grain cannot establish the condition of all 8 barrels. No. But it establishes why he lowered the rack for recovery instead of abandoning it. The divers raised a broken stave next. Edrin had carved words along its inner face. Full-depth treatment failed return test. Rack isolated before northern ice. Ulric read the carving twice. Jessamine did not retreat. Captain Shore still departed with reduced supply. He may have created the shortage that later killed the convoy. The former keeper answered from the skiff. He requested replacement barrels from Brimstone. The loading ledger confirmed the request. Denied for departure delay. Approving authority. Crowl Northern Command. No personnel hand. Millicent looked toward Ulric. You approved a system where delay was treated as greater danger than dead fire. His gaze stayed on the recovered stave. Yes. The single word was not apology. It did not reopen her pans. The flagship Sea Dragon shifted in the water. Grayness spread along one lower flank, where residual dead salt remained in its warming grooves. Millicent ordered the groove flushed with heated brine, then replaced the residue with untempered flame salt. Color returned slowly around the edges. Note a miracle. A material answer. The Dragon Keeper recorded every change. Jessamine watched the scale response. Recovery under fresh salt does not prove the convoy could have survived the storm. No. It proves dead salt was an active danger before the storm began. A salvage diver surfaced once more, holding a sealed brass cylinder taken from inside the recovery bell. Edrin had hidden a second record beneath the sea. The cylinder contained a narrow strip of treated sailcloth protected by wax. On it, in his hand, were the words, "I sank the first rack because command refused replacement. If the remaining cores fail, recall every northern ship before the dragons lose the heat to come home." The first recall bell had not yet sounded when Millicent closed her hand over the flagship's salt measure. No living flame salt leaves this skiff for any northern ship until every sailor and sea dragon on that route is ordered home. The Dragon Keeper beside her went still. Across the water, the flagship's largest dragon labored beneath the gray morning, color returning only in a narrow band where untempered salt had replaced the dead residue in its warming grooves. Jessamine Crowl stepped down from the rail. "You have temporary witness standing, not command over naval deployment. I have authority to reject any batch that fails the return test. The fresh salt has not failed. The route has." Jessamine's voice remained controlled. "A fleet cannot abandon northern waters because one recovered rack confirms a disputed treatment failure from 3 years ago." Millicent held up Edrin's sealed sailcloth record. "He ordered recall before the dragons lost enough heat to come home. He was not the Dragon King. No. He was the man your findings blamed after his warning became true." Ulric stood between the chart table and the injured sea dragon. "How many ships currently carry full-depth treated salt?" The fleet clerk opened the active supply ledger. 9 northern vessels had departed with stabilized cargo. 4 carried sea dragons. 2 had already crossed Frostwake Reach, where messenger birds could not survive the wind, Jessamine said. 7 of those ships reported normal barrel color before departure. Millicent looked at her. "Color preserved the corpse last time, too." Ulric ordered signal towers lit from Blackglass to North Cape, and every reachable northern vessel recalled for salt examination. Jessamine's jaw tightened. "You will leave the eastern channels unguarded. I will not guard them with dragons that cannot hold enough heat to return." He turned to Millicent. "Release untempered reserve for the flagship and the harbor escorts." "Not yet." The refusal crossed the deck more sharply than any raised voice. "These dragons need living salt," Ulric said. "So do the ones beyond Frostwake Reach. We cannot reach them faster by weakening the ships still here. You can reach them with a recall strong enough that no captain mistakes pride for command." Jessamine said, "The king has issued the order. The king once issued preservation authority broad enough to kill fire without naming flame salt. I want the wording read before witnesses." Ulric looked at the signal clerk. "Write it." The recall order named the danger plainly. "Possible heat. Return failure in full-depth treated flame salt. All northern ships were to turn south, preserve dragon warmth, avoid additional cooling, and report every barrel treatment before entering harbor. No captain was permitted to continue for cargo priority, territorial display, or schedule." Millicent read each line. Only then did she release enough untempered salt for the flagship dragon and 2 escort beasts. She did not return the full reserve. Jessamine watched the measured portions. "You are rationing royal property. I am preserving living heat until the route is empty." Ulric did not overrule her. That was action, not repair. Brimstone pans still stood behind royal guards. Jessamine still held the contract that had placed the same process inside every naval hold. The injured sea dragon rose when the fresh salt began warming beneath its scales. Its left forelimb trembled, and gray residue remained trapped along the lower ribs. Millicent walked beside it as the keepers guided it from the water toward the basalt recovery slope. The stone steamed beneath her boots. Ulric came alongside when the dragon faltered and offered his arm. "Years ago, He had carried her across the burning flats before she could ask him not to. Millicent did not take it. Do not mistake walking beside the wound for repairing who caused it. His arm lowered. I won't. They continued on opposite sides of the dragon. At the upper platform, Millicent cleaned each warming groove with hot brine, while the keepers recorded scale color, breath temperature, and salt return. Ulric remained far enough away not to crowd her, near enough to hear every instruction. Jessamine reviewed the recall replies as they arrived. 3 ships acknowledged and turned south. One reported weakening scale color. A second reported that its inner salt remained red but no longer warmed dragon breath. The evidence had moved beyond Northwake. It was happening now. Order them to stop using the treated cores, Millicent said. Break only the upper living shell into the emergency grooves. Keep the dead center sealed away from scale, Jessamine said. Partial barrel use may destabilize the cargo. Full use will drain the dragons. Ulric sent Millicent's instructions under royal seal and named her temporary heat authority for the recall. She looked at him. You keep adding titles inside the emergency while keeping the source of the knowledge under guard. The Pans remain part of the inquiry. Then your fleet still depends on a woman you have not allowed to protect her own fire. He did not answer with regret. He ordered independent witnesses placed at Brimstone before any further salt could be moved. Naval hands could no longer cool, seal, or load a barrel without a harvester and dragon keeper present. It was the first protection applied before damage instead of after it. It was still not restoration. By evening, the first recalled vessel entered Blackglass Harbor under torn sails. Its sea dragon swam beside it instead of carrying the hull, conserving what heat remained. Millicent met the creature at the landing. Grayness covered half its neck. The captain carried the active treatment ledger himself. Full-depth cooling was ordered after we sailed, he said. The rings were fitted aboard at the second supply station. Under whose adjustment? Ulric asked. The captain opened the page. Crowl Northern Command. Again, no personal signature. Jessamine did not move. An office code can be copied. Then preserve the hand that entered it, Millicent said. The clerk examined the ink, pressure, and countersign. This order was entered after the recall towers lit. Ulric's face hardened. Someone authorized continued cooling after the danger was known. A harbor horn sounded from the Western Watch. The 4th Northern vessel had not turned south. Its captain had received a sealed countermand ordering him to continue beyond Frostwake Reach with all dragons and cargo intact. The recall fires had barely reached the western cliffs when Ulric ordered the fastest cutter launched. The 4th vessel had 6 hours before Frostwake Reach closed behind moving ice. Its sea dragons would be carrying treated salt through the coldest current on the northern route. Jessamine stood at the harbor table. The countermand may have been issued to protect the eastern passage. A captain beyond the second tower cannot always turn without exposing the fleet. Then whoever issued it chose exposure without naming the heat failure, Millicent said. Ulric looked to the dragon keeper. Which beast can make the intercept? None at full war speed. The flagship dragon is recovering, but not enough for the reach. Millicent studied the current chart. We do not need war speed. We need the brimstone underflow. Jessamine's gaze sharpened. That current runs beneath volcanic vents. It also cuts 2 hours from the northern turn. No royal vessel uses it. No royal vessel asks the harvesters who cross boiling flats where the sea carries heat. Ulric ordered a shallow-keel salt cutter prepared under Millicent's navigation. No dragon would be forced to tow it. The recovering flagship beast would swim beside the hull only through the warmer southern current, carrying emergency living salt to the vessel ahead. Millicent stepped aboard without waiting for Ulric's hand. He followed as king, not as comfort. The cutter entered the underflow at dusk. Steam rose around the black cliffs, and the sea glowed red beneath the hull where volcanic cracks opened far below. Millicent read the heat by the taste of the spray and the color of mineral foam. 3 points east, she told the helmsman. Hold until the steam thins. Then cut north. Jessamine had remained at Blackglass under guard of the inquiry witnesses. She had objected to the restriction as an insult to naval command. Ulric had called it preservation of the command chain. Millicent had called it late. They reached the fleeing vessel before midnight. Its sails were rimmed with ice. 2 sea dragons strained at the towing harness, their scales gray along the shoulders and throat. The captain had not yet entered Frostwake Reach, but the cold ahead had already begun taking what little heat remained. Millicent crossed by rope bridge while the hulls rose against one another. "Open every warming groove," she ordered. "Stop feeding from the barrel cores. Use only the upper shell until we test it." The captain stared at Ulric. "Majesty." The countermand ordered all cargo kept sealed, and the northern route maintained. Ulric held out his hand. "Give me the order." The wax carried his emergency recall seal. The paper carried a Crowl Northern Command countersign. Both were genuine impressions. The wording was not. "Operational necessity supersedes temporary heat inquiry. Continue north. Do not break treated barrels. Preserve all untempered reserve for transfer at Frostwake Station." Millicent read the final line twice. Why preserve the untempered reserve while feeding dead cores to the dragons? The captain's face changed. "We were told the untempered barrels were diplomatic cargo." "Marked for whom?" The manifest named no buyer. It listed only a foreign exchange code and 6 barrels taken from Brimstone before the pans were closed. Jessamine had not replaced Millicent's salt. The Navy had killed the batches it used while keeping living salt untouched for another destination. Ulric's voice hardened. "Who delivered this countermand?" "A signal launch from Blackglass." The courier wore Northern Command gray. "Nama?" He gave none. Millicent knelt beside the nearest dragon. Gray residue packed the grooves beneath its jaw. She flushed them with hot brine, while the dragon keeper broke open one treated barrel under witness. The upper crystals still returned a faint warmth. The core swallowed it. They sealed the dead center in iron tins and fed only the living shell into the cleaned grooves. Then Millicent opened one of the untempered reserve barrels. Heat rose in a red breath. The dragon's next exhale steamed across the deck. Color returned slowly along the throat. Not enough to erase the damage. Enough to turn the vessel home. "Recall the second dragon from the harness," Millicent said. "Let the current carry the ship south while they recover." The captain obeyed. Ulric ordered the countermand. Wax, manifest, and barrel records sealed beneath independent witness. He revoked every active Crowl office code until each holder could be named. Millicent looked at him. "You can close an office code in 1 sentence. My pans have remained closed through 7 days of proof. The contract inquiry is not complete. Neither was the salt inquiry when you confiscated them." He did not defend the difference. The cutter and recalled vessel turned south together. The sea dragons swam free beside the hulls, each breath strengthening as living salt returned heat instead of consuming it. Near dawn, the signal clerk aboard the vessel examined the countermand wax. "The King's seal was taken from the recall order," he said. "But the countersign was pressed afterward with an active Northern Command matrix." "Who held the matrices after the recall?" Ulric asked. The clerk opened the command register. 3 existed. 1 remained locked in the signal tower. 1 belonged to the technical dispatch office. The 3rd was carried personally by Admiral Jessamine Crowl. Millicent did not call that guilt. "A matrix names access," she said. "Not the hand that pressed it." The clerk turned to the foreign exchange code on the manifest. "This code is older than the countermand. It appears in naval trade accounts." "Open them," Ulric said. The clerk hesitated. "They are protected under Admiralty commerce privilege." Ulric broke the privilege seal before the sunrise reached the deck. The first account listed payments from 3 northern foreign fleets. The second listed Brimstone barrels transferred without cold treatment. The third named the receiving authority, Crowl Private Maritime Trust. At the bottom, beside the most recent payment, stood a delivery instruction dated the morning Millicent's pans were confiscated. "Preserve living batches for foreign contract. Stabilize naval allotment under full-depth protocol." Ulric froze every Crowl maritime account before the cutter reached Blackglass Harbor. He also suspended all 3 Northern Command matrices, sealed the technical dispatch office, and ordered Admiral Jessamine Crowl relieved of operational authority until a public inquiry could examine the countermand. He did not call her guilty. He called the command chain unsafe. By noon, the hearing platform above the harbor held harvesters, dragon keepers, recalled captains, naval clerks, and sailors who had watched blue-black scales turn gray beneath approved procedure. Jessamine arrived without shackles. "I will not have an admiral displayed as a criminal before evidence distinguishes private commerce from naval necessity," Ulric said. Millicent stood beside 2 barrels from the same Brimstone batch. One had been assigned to the foreign contract and left untempered. The other had been sent to a royal vessel and treated at full depth. Jessamine looked at them. Foreign buyers paid for untreated cargo because their own handlers assumed the transport risk. The Navy stabilized its allotment because Royal Command remains responsible for every hold fire. Then let the salt answer what the account language avoids, Millicent said. A dragon keeper placed a healthy shed scale between the barrels. Millicent opened the foreign allotment first. Heat rose through the crystals in a low red glow. When she pressed a grain to the scale, warmth traveled beneath its ridges and returned. She opened the navel barrel. The outer layer answered weakly. The core drew the red light inward and left a gray ring on the scale. Both barrels carried her seal. Both came from the same pan-witness record. Only the naval allotment had passed through the cooling rings. You preserved living batches for customers who paid your trust, Millicent said. You gave the king's dragons the color of fire after killing what made it useful. Jessamine's voice remained steady. The private sales financed northern ship repairs. The naval treatment complied with approved safety classification. Was the trust profit returned to the royal fleet? Ulric ordered the accounts read. Some payments funded dry dock stone, signal towers, and winter rope. Others passed into Crowl-controlled warehouses, private escorts, and land held under the Admiral's family trust. The trust steward, Mistress Nerissa Quell, was brought forward. Who selected the barrels for foreign sale? Ulric asked. The Crowl Commerce Desk. Who instructed the desk to preserve those batches without cooling? The standing contract required live return certification. Millicent turned toward Jessamine. The foreign contract recognized living salt. A buyer may demand any private standard. But your naval code called the same substance volatile mineral. Jessamine said nothing. Millicent faced the steward. Who approved live return certification? Nerissa opened the trust charter. The signature belonged to Jessamine Crowl. Not an office code. Not a command stamp. Her personal hand. Jessamine did not deny the signature. I approved a commercial condition. That does not prove I believed full-depth stabilization endangered dragons. No, Millicent said. It proves you understood heat return when money required it. The harbor went quiet. Ulric ordered the foreign contract standards entered beside the naval classification. For 2 years, the trust had tested every exported barrel against healthy scale before payment. For those same 2 years, no naval code had required the test after cooling. The Navy knew how to measure living fire, Millicent said. It chose not to measure it where the answer would challenge unified control. Jessamine looked at Ulric. The foreign revenue kept the Northern Fleet supplied when the Crown Treasury failed. I standardized naval cargo because independent handlers delayed deployment and increased flare risk. You kept the standard that protected payment, he said. You denied it to the dragons carrying my ships. I acted within the authority you granted. The truth struck without absolving either of them. Ulric had approved broad control. Jessamine had shaped that control into a system where living salt remained alive for private buyers and died under royal custody. Millicent did not let him stand outside the chain. She used the room your decree gave her. Yes, Ulric said. He ordered Crowl maritime assets held for restitution. Jessamine removed from salt procurement, and every full-depth treatment order suspended. He did not restore brimstone pans. Millicent looked toward the royal guard still visible on the distant red flats. You can remove her hand from the contract and still keep yours closed around my pans. The ownership decree requires a public ruling. You did not require one to take them. Ulric accepted the blow without reaching for her. Then the ruling will be held before sunset tomorrow. That is a date, Millicent said. Not repair. No. The hearing continued. The signal launch register showed that the countermand had departed Blackglass after the recall towers were lit. Its courier was listed under a false dispatch number, but the launch itself belonged to Jessamine's private command berth. The launchmaster, Captain Orlan Veer, had not returned with it. Ulric ordered the harbor searched. They found the launch beneath the western chain gate, its sail cut down and its dispatch box empty. Jessamine said, "A stolen launch and copied matrix suggests someone used my access. Then, identify who knew the foreign allotment had to remain sealed," Millicent said. The trust steward examined the countermand. The wording matched a private contract instruction issued that morning. Preserve all untempered reserve for transfer. Only the destination had been removed. A naval clerk compared the pen pressure. Both orders had been entered by the same dispatch hand. The hand belonged to Jessamine's senior command secretary. He was found in the technical dispatch office, burning treatment ledgers in a salt furnace. Ulric ordered the fire quenched. The secretary did not confess. He claimed he had destroyed obsolete duplicates understanding archive rules. Among the half-burned pages lay a matrix use sheet. It recorded the Admiral's personal command matrix, leaving Jessamine's chart room after the recall. Returned. Never. Authorized bearer. Captain Orlin Veer. Purpose. Foreign contract protection. Millicent read the final notation. Below the official line, someone had added a private instruction in the secretary's hand. If recall threatens delivery, keep the fourth vessel north until the living barrels are transferred. Jessamine's face remained still. Ulric asked one question. Who gave that instruction? Before the secretary could answer, the western harbor bell began striking for an incoming crippled ship. The missing signal launch drifted through the gate under torn sail. At its helm stood Captain Orlin Veer, bloodless with cold. One arm wrapped around the dispatch box he had refused to burn. The harbor chain lifted before the crippled launch struck the stone quay. Captain Orlin Veer collapsed, only after the dispatch box passed into the hands of 3 independent witnesses. Frost had split his lips, and one sleeve was black with salt water, but the box remained sealed beneath his coat. I was ordered to deliver the countermand, he said when the dragon keeper had warmed him enough to speak. Then I learned what it protected. Ulric did not ask for accusation. He ordered the seal opened before the full harbor hearing. Inside lay the original foreign transfer manifest, the missing matrix record, and a private instruction written in Jessamine Crowl's hand. Preserve 6 living barrels for northern buyers. Naval allotment may continue under approved stabilization. If recall interrupts transfer, hold the 4th vessel beyond Frostwake until exchange is complete. Jessamine read the page without pleading. The foreign contracts finance defenses the Crown refused to fund, she said. I protected the fleet's future. You protected the cargo that earned payment, Millicent answered. You let the dragons carry what remained after profit was kept alive. I used an authorized process. You knew enough to demand scale. Return certification for strangers. Jessamine looked toward Ulric. And you gave Northern Command the authority to act without delay. Ulric did not step outside the chain. I did. The words did not soften what followed. He removed Jessamine from Naval Office, placed the Crowl Trust under restitution, and ordered the Secretary and Captain Veer's command superiors held for formal judgment. Orlin was not cleared merely because he returned the box. His part in carrying the countermand would be reviewed beside the evidence that he refused to destroy. Then Ulric reopened the Northwake ruling before the harbor. The independent witnesses read Edrin's hidden page, the recovered stave, the blue frost marks, the missing core samples, and the brass sea record. The former dragon keeper testified that Edrin had isolated the first dead rack and requested living replacement before Blackglass Narrows. The old verdict of negligent preparation could no longer stand. Ulric faced Millicent before the corrected record was sealed. Edrin Shore identified a lethal failure in naval treatment, preserved evidence after command ignored him, and removed dead salt to protect 6 sea dragons. His unauthorized disposal charge is revoked. His Northwake command record will state that he attempted recall before the fleet lost the heat to return. Millicent did not thank him. A corrected record is not a gift from the Crown. No, Ulric said. It is a debt paid late. Edrin was not declared flawless. The remaining navigation decisions would stay under historical review. But the lie that his neglect had killed the dragons was removed from the public roll. At sunset, the guards left Brimstone Pans. Ulric did not return the old contract to Millicent alone. The seizure decree was broken before the harvesters, keepers, sailors, and widows whose families had depended on the northern route. In its place, the harbor court established the Brimstone Flame Cooperative. No barrel could leave the pans without a harvester's birth test. No naval process could touch it without a dragon keeper measuring heat return. No cooling, sealing, or loading order could be altered without an independent witness whose wage did not come from naval command. Flame salt was removed from the volatile mineral register and entered as a living heat supply. Full depth cold tempering was forbidden. Sea dragon heat response, scale return, core life, and recovery requirements were written into naval law. Millicent received authority to halt any shipment before damage, not merely reject it afterward. Only after the charter was sealed did Ulric speak of his own part. I mistook unified control for safety. I treated delay as danger and independent knowledge as obstruction. I closed the pans before asking what my own system had done to their fire. He did not ask forgiveness. Millicent stood with Edrin's sea cloak folded over one arm. You made my knowledge useful after making my authority illegal. Yes. You listened when your dragons began to fail. Yes. You did not listen when only my husband's name was dying. His face tightened. But he did not defend himself. No. The first recovered northern vessels returned over the next 3 days. Their sea dragons entered Blackglass Harbor weak, gray-edged, and alive. Recovery came slowly. Dead salt was removed from every warming groove. The dragons were washed with heated brine, rested in volcanic shallows, and given measured living salt under Millicent's direction. Color returned first around the breath channels, then along the shoulders and wings. No miracle crossed the harbor, only correct material, patient care, and a system finally forced to record what living heat required. On the 4th morning, Ulric came to Brimstone Pans without crown guard. The largest recovering sea dragon waited beside the western basin, one flank still dull. Millicent handed Ulric a brass measure. Test the salt. He knelt at the pan. For the first time, the Dragon King did not order a harvester to prove her work. He followed her instruction. Take from the inner red edge, she said. Not the bright crust. He chose the crystals carefully. Warm them between both palms. He obeyed. Now touch them to the healthy scale and wait for the heat to return. Do not mistake the first glow for life. The crystal brightened against the dragon's shoulder. Red warmth traveled beneath the scale and came back into Ulric's hand. He exhaled. Living. Now you may touch the dragon. Ulric placed one hand against the warmed scale. The creature remained still. Millicent watched him understand that permission had to come after knowledge, not power. When the dragon rose, it favored its injured side. Millicent walked beside it toward the volcanic shallows. Ulric did not offer his arm. He walked on the opposite side, matching the creature's slower pace. At the water, he stopped. I will not ask you to forget the decree. Good. I will not ask Edrin's corrected name to purchase mine. Good. He looked across the red-lit pans. May I return tomorrow to learn the second test? Millicent considered him for a long moment. Authority had come first. The record had been corrected. The pans no longer belonged to a king, an admiral, or a widow alone. Return at first heat, she said. And bring no seal. Ulric bowed his head. The sea dragon entered the shallows, and living flame salt glowed beneath its recovering scales.